G'day, my name's John. I'm a tour coach driver here in Perth, Western Australia. I'm lucky. My job gets me to travel around the whole state and see lots of great things, and I'd like to show you some of them as well. So why don't you join me? G'day, and how's it going? In this episode we're going to have a look at York. It's about an hour's drive east of Perth. The English arrived on the west coast here in 1829 and set up the Swan River colony. In 1830, Robert Dale, a young 21-year-old officer, was given the task of climbing over the hills to the east of Perth to see what was on the other side. Robert and his party stopped at the river somewhere around here and called it the Avon River. He also decided it was a good looking spot for a town, so he called the area Yorkshire and the town York, as it reminded him of Yorkshire in England when you looked at it from the top of Mount Brown. These days, Mount Brown is a lookout, and you can get a really good idea of what Robert could see at the time. York was the first inland town after the English arrived in WA. There's heaps of interesting things to look at around town and a big heap of history, so let's go and have a look. The road going down from Mount Brown used to be used for box cart racing. Can't help wondering if there's a connection to why the cemetery's at the bottom of the hill. When gold was discovered around Coolgardie, York was more or less the last stop of civilization and, more importantly, supplies. There were no roads or signposts to tell you where to go. Most of the prospectors that came out here in the beginning only had an idea of a direction, or at best a mud map, and a lot of hope. After getting off the train here at the York station, it was then a 400+ kilometre walk to the goldfields. In its heyday, York was a thriving town. Whilst it's a little more laid back these days, there's still plenty going on. York is one of only 2 towns in WA where almost the entire town is on the Heritage Register. If a building is on the State Heritage Register, it can't be pulled down or modified in any way from its original look. They can do almost anything they like to the inside, but the outside must remain original. Walking through the main street is like walking back in time. Just ignore the blacktop roads and the cars, it's just like the old days. The York Motor Museum is recognised as one of the best private collections of veteran, vintage, classic and racing cars in Australia. This is something you would expect to see on the East Coast, not here in WA. It's a great place to visit for the petrol heads or someone who just wants to take a look back at Australian motoring history. But check the opening times before you come to make sure it's open when you get here. Gold wasn't the only big thing of value out here in the bush. Sandalwood was also a big industry. Prospectors would come into York for their supplies, but unless they had found some gold, they usually didn't have any money to pay for it. So to make payment, they would trade sandalwood for their supplies, then head back out to the goldfields. You could drive down this road and never think anything of this shed, but the Marwick shed has been around since about the 1870s, and the Marwick name has been in the local area for over 135 years, with family members being involved in many roles around the community. Wesfarmers, one of Australia's biggest companies, was started by one of the Marwicks right here in York. The shed was the home for the local departure point for the coaching and carrying business servicing the local area and heading out to the goldfields. This later became a depot for the local Cobb & Co. The high roof section was so that the camel trains, which were always loaded to the max, could enter one way and leave the other. The old York Hospital was built in the mid-1890s. It was originally built to service the prospectors coming back from the goldfields. These days it's privately owned. There's a heap of ghost stories involving this building, from what looks like a nurse or matron from around the 1900s, things levitating, and people being thrown around. I'll be leaving now, thanks. The Residency Museum is the last remaining building dating back to the convict days. Originally it was the superintendent's quarters for the district, which included the convict hiring station. Nowadays it's a museum. At some point it became the residence for the local magistrate, hence the name the Residency. Then it was used as a wing of the old hospital. After being run down somewhat, it was taken back up by the York Shire and volunteers moved in to get it back to its former glory. It's only a few dollars to get in and well worth a look. The new town hall was built in 1911. To save some money, the old Mechanics Institute that was here was pulled down, and the bricks and the timber were saved, cleaned up and used in the new building. In an effort to save more money, they used day labourers rather than an experienced building team, yet it still stands today, with a little bit of help, but I'll let you work that out for yourself. It's really quite surprising how much there is around town to see, and there's also a number of festivals during the year. A lot of people come up here from Perth for the day, and there's heaps of different styles of accommodation available in and around the town, so you can easily come up and stay for the weekend. Speaking of that, weekends are usually pretty busy, but weekdays are a bit quieter. Some shops aren't open on Mondays and Tuesdays, but most things should be open towards the end of the week. Just check before you come up. So why don't you add this to your to-do list, and I'll see you on the road sometimes. Happy travels to you all.